The night fell like a curtain over the old Whitmore estate, thick and impenetrable, leaving the crumbling manor bathed in the muted glow of a waning moon. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of dust and decay, mingling with the faint metallic tang of something older, something not entirely of this world. The family had arrived earlier that evening, unaware that the house had been waiting, patient and watchful, for decades. Its floors groaned beneath their steps, each creak echoing like a whispered warning. The portraits lining the walls seemed to follow their movements with sharp, accusing eyes, ancestors long dead, but somehow unwilling to release their vigil. From the first moment, the Whitmores felt it, not a cold, not a shadow, but a presence that pressed against them, subtle yet undeniable. Objects shifted slightly when backs were turned. The soft hum of a piano, untouched for years, resonated faintly through the halls. Doors that were closed tightly sometimes stood ajar upon inspection. Whispers threaded through empty rooms, the language indistinct, but the intent unmistakable. It was a warning, though to what, and to whom they could not yet discern. Thomas Whitmore, the patriarch, dismissed these sensations initially as nerves, or the product of an overactive imagination. He had purchased the estate to reclaim the family's legacy, to restore the grandeur that generations of misfortune had eroded. Yet even his rational mind struggled against the subtle malice suffusing the walls. He observed his children, their expressions a mixture of fascination and terror, and tried to project confidence, though his own pulse betrayed him. The family matriarch, Eleanor, moved through the rooms with careful steps, her hands lightly brushing the dusty furniture, as if testing the solidity of the past itself. She felt the eyes too, and a chill ran down her spine despite the warmth of the room. By midnight, the presence had made itself more overt. In the study a chandelier swayed, though the air was still. Books fell from shelves without cause. Faint footsteps echoed in the hallways above, though no one had ascended the staircase. A cold, almost tangible draft circled the family, brushing across their faces, and carrying with it an indistinct sigh, a whisper of sorrow or anger, or perhaps both. The Whitmores huddled together, sensing that the house itself was aware of their intent to claim it as their own. In that instant, the notion of fighting a ghost seemed both absurd and terrifyingly real. It began with small confrontations. An antique clock on the mantel would stop abruptly at 3 minutes past midnight, then resume ticking when attention was diverted. Mirrors reflected figures behind the family that disappeared when turned to confront them. Windows slammed with a force that no wind could generate, and rooms seemed to expand or contract in ways that defied logic. The family tried to counter with candles, charms, prayers, and spoken commands, declaring their right to the estate, and their intention to reclaim it from whatever forces lingered within. Each attempt was met with resistance, subtle at first, then increasingly aggressive. By the second night, the struggle escalated. Furniture toppled without warning, paintings fell, and the very walls seemed to shudder. Thomas attempted to confront the ghost directly, shouting accusations into the empty corridors, demanding that it reveal itself and cease its interference. The family's youngest, Clara, sat trembling in the corner, clutching her doll to her chest, as a window burst open without wind, the cold air freezing the warmth from the room. Eleanor's voice quavered as she attempted to calm both her husband and children, but her words fell into the oppressive silence that seemed to emanate from every surface. Sleep became a distant memory. Each night the family faced manifestations that bordered on physical assault, hands brushing against skin, unseen weight pressing upon shoulders, whispers that clawed into their ears. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, creeping across the floor to pin them in place. The mansion itself appeared to be learning their habits, anticipating their movements, twisting the environment to heighten fear. The Whitmores' unity, their determination, began to fray under the constant psychological and emotional barrage. They had entered with the belief that the house was theirs to claim, and now they confronted the reality that some battles could not be won through stubbornness alone. By the third night, the presence had begun to shape itself. Figures appeared in the periphery of vision, sometimes humanoid, other times monstrous, blending memories of ancestors with grotesque distortions. The family attempted to photograph or record these apparitions, but the devices always failed. Screens flickering, tapes corrupted, batteries drained in an instant. The mansion seemed to feed on their efforts, each act of resistance transforming into a catalyst for further manifestation. Fear was no longer a mere sensation. It had become a tangible entity, entwined with the house's pulse, with the shadows, with the very air they breathed. In a moment of clarity, or perhaps desperation, Thomas and Eleanor convened the family in the great hall, attempting to perform a makeshift ritual of protection, relying on old family texts and symbols left behind by long-dead Whitmore. Candles were arranged in precise formations, salt and water were placed strategically, names were spoken aloud in hopes of invoking lineage and authority, but the mansion reacted violently. A wind, icy and forceful, surged through the room, extinguishing candles and scattering protective markers. The floorboards groaned under invisible weight, and a scream echoed, unidentifiable but eerily familiar, as though borrowed from some ancestral memory. By dawn it was clear. The Whitmores were no longer in control. The house had claimed authority. It was not a malevolent entity in the traditional sense. It was a sentinel, a mirror of the family's history, their hubris, their mistakes. To fight it was to fight themselves, and every act of defiance only tightened the mansion's grip. In that first morning light, the Whitmores understood the immutable truth. They had come seeking dominion, but the house would only yield to surrender, not confrontation. And yet, even in recognition of their futility, the family could not abandon hope entirely. Each whispered creak, each shadow, each subtle vibration beneath their feet, reminded them of what they were up against. Not a simple ghost, but the culmination of a lineage's mistakes, fears, and unfinished business. To survive, they would have to navigate not only the spectral presence, but the darkest aspects of their own hearts, confronting truths they had long ignored. The mansion waited, patient as ever. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying with it the distant echoes of laughter, tears, and the countless souls who had attempted and failed to challenge the Whitmore estate before. And within its walls, the family braced themselves for the long night ahead, knowing that the fight had only just begun. The second night descended more heavily than the first, pressing the Whitmores into the shadows of their own home. No longer was the presence merely subtle. It had grown bold, asserting itself with a confidence that bordered on cruelty. The family had attempted to establish some semblance of routine, but the house would not be taken. Every door they closed, every window they locked, seemed to open on its own terms. The mansion had become a living labyrinth, one that shifted and reconfigured, while they slept or wandered from room to room. Clara, the youngest, was the first to notice the pattern. She wandered the halls with the naive bravery of a child, her small frame moving silently along the walls. The shadows seemed to part for her, revealing corridors that the others had never seen, doorways that appeared and vanished at whim. Yet she sensed the danger before it struck. Whispered voices followed her, too soft to comprehend fully, yet heavy with intent. They called her name with a familiarity that chilled her to the bone. Clara, Clara, the echoes breathed, neither malevolent nor comforting, but suffused with a depth of memory that no living person could possess. Thomas and Eleanor convened again, this time in the library, a room lined with towering shelves that seemed to lean inward, as though listening to their conversation. The floorboards beneath their feet creaked unevenly, each sound amplified as if the house itself mocked their attempts at control. "We have to establish authority," Thomas said, his voice firm, though his hands trembled slightly. "This is our home, our family. We cannot allow whatever this is to dominate us." Eleanor nodded, though her eyes betrayed fear she could not. "We must understand it first," she replied, voice barely above a whisper. If we confront blindly, it will consume us faster. The strategy they devised was methodical. They marked thresholds with salt, a line of protection drawn across every doorway and staircase. Candles were placed at points of convergence, and the family invoked names from the ancestral records, hoping that the bloodline itself could serve as a shield. But the house adapted. Candles extinguished themselves mid-flame. Salt was scattered as if by invisible hands, and the very air seemed to thicken with anticipation, heavy and suffocating. A soft laughter echoed through the halls, low and knowing, mocking in its clarity. That night the manifestations escalated. Thomas, investigating a sudden cold in the west wing, felt hands grip his shoulders from behind. He spun, but no one was there. The air around him shimmered as though alive, each breath drawing tighter, each heartbeat echoing against invisible walls. Eleanor discovered the dining room chairs had been rearranged into a circle overnight, each facing inward, as if to observe some unseen ceremony. The children huddled together, their bodies shivering, eyes wide as the temperature dropped and shadows lengthened unnatural. Clara saw something others could not. In a mirror, left untouched for decades, a figure appeared, a woman in tattered finery, her eyes hollow yet intense, lips moving silently. Clara froze, recognizing a resemblance she could not explain. The figure reached out with translucent hands, and Clara felt a sharp tingling cold that ran from her fingertips to her chest. "Do not fight," the apparition whispered, voice faint but piercing. "Do not fight, or all will be lost." Clara blinked, and the figure was gone, leaving only the reflection of herself staring back, pale and frightened. The family's unity began to fray. Thomas insisted on confrontation, Eleanor urged caution, and the children fluctuated between terror and fascination. Arguments erupted over the smallest provocations, whether to continue exploring the house or retreat, whether to speak aloud or maintain silence, whether to challenge the presence or submit. The mansion seemed to feed on their discord, amplifying fears and projecting them in tangible ways. Footsteps followed them in rooms, doors slammed without wind, and objects flung themselves across corridors with increasing force. By the early hours of the morning, the Whitmores understood the gravity of their situation. The house was not just a vessel for spirits, it was an extension of the family's own history, a crucible of past mistakes, secrets, and unspoken sin. Every manifestation, every shadow, every whispered name, was drawn from the legacy they had inherited. To fight it without understanding was to fight themselves, and the cost of failure was immediate and tangible. Thomas bore a bruise on his shoulder that appeared without cause. Eleanor's hair was caught inexplicably in a splintered window frame, and Clara's doll lay shredded in a room they had locked just hours before. The present seemed to respond to the family's emotional state. When fear spiked, the house grew bolder. When hope emerged, it receded slightly, almost cautiously. They realized, slowly, that control was never theirs to take. It could only be negotiated. The mansion required acknowledgement, respect, and above all an understanding of the intricate weave of history that bound them to its walls. Hours dragged into dawn, the pale light seeping through grimy windows revealing a house that appeared unchanged, calm, yet infinitely aware. The Whitmores were exhausted, mentally and physically. They had survived another night, but survival felt hollow, overshadowed by the realization that the fight was far from over. Each room, each hallway, each whisper was a reminder that their presence had awakened something ancient and patient, something that would not relent for weeks, months, perhaps even years. And yet, in those fleeting moments of respite, the family glimpsed the first shards of understanding. The house was not a malicious entity to be destroyed. It was a reflection of what had been hidden, repressed, or forgotten. The shadows were drawn from their own lineage, the whispers from untold stories, the manifestations from decisions left unresolved. To survive, to endure, the Whitmores would need to navigate not only the supernatural forces within the mansion, but the dark recesses of their own family history, confronting truths that had been buried for generations. The second night ended, not with triumph,
but with fragile comprehension. The family huddled together, each aware that sleep would not bring solace but preparation. The house had revealed its first rules. It would push, it would test, it would expose, and the Whitmores, shaken and terrified, realized that to challenge a ghost was not merely a battle of the supernatural, it was a confrontation with themselves, and the consequences of failure were as real as the air they breathed. By the third night, the Whitmores had begun to accept the grim truth. The house was alive, and it was aware of every thought, every fear, every hidden memory. What had started as subtle disturbances had escalated into something that could no longer be ignored or rationalized. Every room was a potential theater of the uncanny, every shadow a lurking witness. Even the air had a weight now, as if the mansion exhaled and inhaled alongside them, measuring their resolve. Clara refused to stay confined to a room. Despite Eleanor's insistence, the child had developed an instinct for sensing the patterns of the presence. She wandered the west wing, where dust motes floated like specters in the thin shafts of moonlight, her small hand tracing the contours of walls that seemed to ripple ever so slightly under her. She paused at a long-forgotten portrait, the paint peeling, and the frame warped, and froze. The face of a stern-looking man stared back, eyes painted with an intensity that made her stomach knot. He was a Whitmore, she realized, though she could not name him. The shadows around the portrait shifted, darkening and curling, whispering fragments of conversation she could not quite piece together. Meanwhile, Thomas began cataloging the occurrences, jotting notes with a mixture of desperation and scientific detachment. He recorded temperatures, the direction of drafts, the timing of sounds, and the locations of disturbances. He reasoned that if the phenomena were patterned, understanding them might provide leverage. Yet no matter how meticulous he was, the house seemed to anticipate his notes vanished, papers scattered without explanation, and the ink in his pen would congeal into black viscous pools, unreadable and unusable. Eleanor, on the other hand, had begun to explore the emotional resonance of the mansion. She insisted that logic alone could not solve what was essentially a problem of memory and grief. Every room, she theorized, was imbued with traces of those who had come before, both ancestors and intruders. She combed through old family ledgers and diaries, searching for names, incidents, and secrets that could illuminate the source of the disturbances. Each revelation felt like a knife twist. Long-forgotten disputes, betrayals, and tragedies surfaced, painting a complex web of cause and effect that linked the family irrevocably to the house's malevolence. The children became both instruments and observers of the mansion's whim. Michael, the middle child, discovered a set of stairs that seemed to lead nowhere, a spiral carved from the stone of the house itself. At the bottom, the air was damp and cold, filled with the smell of decayed wood and earth. Shadows writhed along the walls, forming shapes that resembled faces contorted in silent screams. Michael's screams, muffled by the thickening darkness, reverberated through the empty stairwell, but no one could reach him until Clara, trusting the instinct that had guided her before, led him back to the top with whispered instructions that seemed to guide them both through an invisible maze. That night, the presence became almost conversational. Thomas, trying to assert control, spoke aloud to the shadows. "If you are here, if you exist, show yourself. Do not hide behind tricks and whispers. Face us." The house responded immediately. A floorboard split under his feet, sharp splinters cutting into his shoes, and a distant hollow voice, neither male nor female, answered, "We have always been here. You only now notice." It was not threatening, but the tone carried a weight of centuries, an authority that rendered the family momentarily silent. Eleanor began to notice something in the manifestations. Objects moved not randomly but with intention, forming patterns that reflected past events. A chair falling over near the library's hearth echoed a quarrel between siblings decades ago. A book opened mid-page recited the confession of a distant Whitmore ancestor. A cracked mirror reflected not the present but a memory, an event from the family's hidden history. Each revelation was a reminder that the house was not only alive, but deeply intertwined with the lineage of its occupants. The third night also brought dreams that were not dreams. Each family member awoke with impressions of past tragedies. Clara saw herself as a child of a previous generation, facing abandonment in the same halls. Michael experienced betrayal at the hands of a relative he had never known. Thomas relived a business failure that had cursed the family with debt, now intertwined with the spectral presence that stalked their life. Eleanor saw it all at once. The chain of mistakes, the unspoken sins, the gradual decay of family unity, and understood that confronting the house required more than strength. It required reconciliation with history itself.
By dawn, the Whitmores were exhausted, their nerves frayed, their bodies tense from the unrelenting tension. The mansion had proven its power, not through direct harm, but through psychological attrition, eroding their confidence and forcing them to acknowledge their own complicity in the legacy they had inherited. It was no longer a question of whether they could leave. The house had made it clear that it would not release them willingly, and yet a fragile hope began to emerge. In understanding the nature of the house, the family began to see a path forward, not by fighting but by listening, not by resisting but by acknowledging. Each whisper, each cold gust of air, each shifting shadow was a message, a clue, a fragment of history demanding recognition. If the Whitmores could read the mansion correctly, they might negotiate an uneasy truce. The third night ended with the family huddled together in the drawing room, listening to the subtle creaks and sighs of the house as if it were breathing around them. They were no longer merely victims. They were participants in an unfolding dialogue that spanned generations. The mansion had revealed itself to be patient, knowing, and deeply aware, and the Whitmores realized that their survival depended on learning its rules. By the fourth night, the house had escalated its engagement with the Whitmores. The subtle creaks and whispers of earlier nights had transformed into deliberate movements and clear signs of intelligence. It was as though the mansion had decided that passive observation would no longer suffice. Every footstep, every heartbeat of the family seemed to be monitored, catalogued, and responded to in kind. The very air was thick with expectation, charged with the tension of centuries of secrets that the family could neither deny nor fully comprehend. Clara had become the most sensitive to the mansion's will. Her small frame allowed her to slip into corners and narrow passages that the adults could not reach, and she often returned with cryptic reports. Doors that had been closed tight now stood ajar. Faint, scratching sounds emanated from behind the walls, and objects that were moved during the night were sometimes restored in exact positions the following morning. She spoke of these events quietly, as if speaking too loudly would summon some immediate reprise, yet her observations proved invaluable. The adults began to recognize a rhythm in the disturbances, a pattern that suggested the mansion was not mindless, but deeply purposeful. Thomas, driven by a need to impose order, began experiment. He placed small items in strategic locations throughout the house, watches, coins, books, and observed how they were affected by the night. Some vanished entirely, only to reappear in another part of the mansion. Others were moved, always in ways that hinted at narrative. A book opened to a page describing betrayal, a coin placed atop a ledger of debts. It was as if the mansion itself was telling stories, intertwining its history with that of the Whitmores, using the objects as punctuation in a language the family had only begun to decipher. Eleanor focused on understanding the emotional resonance of each space. She discovered that rooms carried memories, not just from the living but from those long gone. The kitchen retained the scent of old meals, the echoes of arguments over inheritance, the laughter of children who had never grown old. The library held grudges, intellectual debates, and hidden confessions. The bedrooms whispered of secrets kept under lock and key, promises broken, and dreams extinguished. Eleanor realized that the house was less an inanimate building, and more a repository of human experience, each room a vessel of unresolved history, demanding recognition. Michael discovered a peculiar phenomenon in the attic. Trapped between layers of dust and cobwebs, he found a series of old letters bound in leather, faded and nearly illegible.
The letters chronicled the lives of ancestors, their misdeeds, and the consequences that had rippled through generations. Some spoke of greed, others of cruelty, a few of kindness overlooked and forgotten. Reading them was exhausting, both mentally and emotionally, yet the attic revealed a crucial insight. The mansion's behavior was not random, it was reactive. The house responded to the moral and emotional weight of its inhabitants. It punished negligence, magnified fear, and amplified unresolved guilt. That night, the house staged an event that the Whitmores could not ignore. As they settled into their respective rooms, a loud crash reverberated from the main hall. The chandelier, long thought stable, hung precariously swaying though no breeze disturbed it. The walls seemed to pulse, and the floor vibrated beneath their feet. A voice, faint and fractured, whispered through the corridors, "You cannot hide, you cannot ignore. You are part of us now." The words were not spoken in anger, nor were they a plea. They were a declaration of possession, a warning that the house had assumed its authority. Faced with this escalation, the Whitmores convened in the parlor, the only room that felt relatively stable. They debated their next course of action. Some urged confrontation, others caution. Clara, quiet until now, suggested a different approach. "Maybe we need to listen, maybe it wants us to understand." The room fell silent. Her words carried an innocence that cut through the fear, offering a fragile thread of hope. Perhaps the mansion was not an enemy to be fought, but a teacher to be understood. Eleanor took this to heart. She began documenting every detail of the house's reactions, cross-referencing them with the family's behavior and emotional state. She noted correlations. When anger flared, objects fell. When fear was palpable, temperatures dropped. When confusion reigned, walls seemed to shift. Each observation brought them closer to deciphering the mansion's unspoken language, though the process was slow and fraught with uncertainty. Meanwhile, Thomas attempted a different strategy: negotiation. He spoke aloud, addressing the house directly. "We acknowledge you, we recognize your history. We seek not to harm, but to coexist. Let us find a way to live together." The response was immediate, yet inscrutable. A set of portraits in the hall tilted forward, their eyes appearing to follow him. The grandfather clock struck 13 times, though the hour was only 11. The mansion communicated in symbolism, and the family was still learning to interpret it. As dawn broke, the fourth night left the Whitmores both drained and enlightened. They had endured the most intense manifestations yet they had also gained insight. The house was reactive, intelligent, and deeply tied to their lineage. It was not merely a place of terror, it was a mirror, reflecting the unresolved sins, fears, and regrets of generations. Survival required more than courage. It required empathy, understanding, and the willingness to confront their own shadows. By the morning light, the family knew that the fourth night was a turning point. They could no longer act solely as victims. The mansion demanded engagement, participation, and acknowledgement. And so, cautiously, they began to formulate a plan, not of escape, but of reconciliation. They would meet the house on its terms, decipher its signs, and attempt to understand its motive. The fourth night ended with the Whitmores standing together in the parlor, holding hands, each feeling the weight of history pressing upon them. The house settled around them, a silent observer, patient, yet expectant. It had revealed more of its nature than ever before, and the family sensed that they were beginning a dialogue that could shape the remainder of their ordeal. The fifth night arrived with a foreboding heaviness that seemed to press down on the Whitmores even before sunset. The air smelled of damp wood and old ink, a combination that immediately set Clara on edge. She hesitated at the threshold of the parlor, feeling the familiar, invisible tension that had become their constant companion. It was as though the house knew they were preparing for something significant, and it was already watching, waiting, anticipating their every move. Eleanor had spent the day mapping the house's previous reactions, creating a chart of disturbances versus family behavior. She believed that understanding patterns might give them leverage. The more she studied, the more apparent it became that the mansion was not just reactive, it was selective. Certain rooms, certain objects, and certain emotional responses seemed to hold more weight than others. A broken mirror in the hall had caused tremors that night, but a similarly shattered vase in the dining room was ignored. Fear, pride, remorse and hope were not equally recognized. The house judged which to amplify and which to ignore. Thomas, meanwhile, had begun to feel the strain physically. His once steady hands now shook when he attempted to manipulate objects within the house. Sleep was a fleeting visitor. The nightmarish echoes of previous events haunted him even during daylight. He wrestled with anger, the kind that demanded action, retaliation and a show of strength. Yet the house had made clear that brute force would not suffice. The objects moved, the walls shifted, and the air pulsed in ways that mocked aggression. His only option was subtlety, patience and negotiation, a challenge that gnawed at his pride. Michael, usually pragmatic and grounded, found himself unsettled in ways he could not articulate. His analytical mind sought to catalogue every sound, every motion, every shadow, but the house was proving an expert at misdirection. Staircases appeared to elongate, doors led to corridors they had never seen, and echoes returned messages that twisted the original words. It became evident that the mansion could manipulate perception, creating an environment where reality and imagination blur. Michael began to suspect that understanding the house might require abandoning conventional logic entirely. That evening, as twilight sank into the rooms, the house made its presence unmistakable. A low, resonant hum vibrated through the floorboards, a sound that seemed to emanate from the very bones of the structure. Clara froze in the hallway, the sensation crawling along her skin like the touch of unseen finger. The hum grew louder, forming a rhythm, a cadence that almost resembled a heartbeat. It was steady, unyielding, and insistently patient. The family gathered in the parlor once more, huddled together as the resonance continued, the mansion's silent message pressing in on them. It was time for acknowledgement, not defiance. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice soft but determined. She addressed the house directly, aware that their collective fear had been both a shield and a barrier. We see you. We hear you. We understand that you are more than walls and timber. We know you carry the weight of those who came before, and we wish to honor that history, not desecrate it. Her words hung in the air, met with silence at first, then a sudden cascade of sounds. Books fell from shelves, a painting twisted violently on the wall, and a window rattled as if trying to scream. Yet beneath the chaos was a subtle harmony, a strange acknowledgement that they had spoken the right words, though the manner of recognition was terrifying. Thomas, encouraged by Eleanor's approach, attempted a different tactic. He carried one of the letters discovered in the attic, carefully handling the brittle pages, and placed it on the center table. The letter contained confessions of past misdeeds, admissions of betrayal, and pleas for forgiveness from generations long dead. Perhaps, he murmured, if we show that we are aware of what was done, the house will recognize our honesty. No sooner had he spoken than the floorboards beneath the table vibrated rhythmically, resonating with the cadence of Eleanor's acknowledgement. A thin mist rose from the letter, curling into shapes that suggested figures moving silently within the room. It was not threatening, but it was intensely watchful, as if the house itself were evaluating the sincerity of their intention. The family spent the remainder of the night documenting the interactions. Each movement, each sound, each reaction was noted meticulously. They began to notice subtleties. Certain gestures of respect were acknowledged while others were ignored. Direct eye contact with specific objects prompted reactions, while avoidance invited silence. The mansion demanded attention to detail, mindfulness of intention, and a willingness to confront the moral complexities embedded within its walls. As dawn approached, the fifth night concluded without injury. but not without revelation. The Whitmores had begun to understand that survival did not require subduing the house, nor fleeing from it. It required dialogue, observation, and a deep empathy for the history intertwined with their own lineage. They had taken the first steps toward a tenuous coexistence, yet the mansion had made one thing clear: the process would be relentless. The house would continue to test, to provoke, and to demand engagement. Clara, exhausted but alert, whispered to her parents, "I think it's listening, really listening, but we have to be honest with it, and with ourselves." Her observation, simple as it seemed, encapsulated the lesson of the night. The mansion was not merely a haunting, it was a mirror, reflecting both the light and darkness of those who lived within it. To move forward, the Whitmores would need to confront not only the house's power, but their own fears, failings, and hidden truth. By the first rays of sunlight, the family emerged from the parlor, physically drained, but mentally invigorated. The fifth night had cemented their understanding that they were participants in a complex, ongoing dialogue with the house. It was not a contest of strength, nor a battle of wills. It was a test of insight, patience, and moral courage. Each family member carried the weight of this revelation differently, but all recognized that the nights ahead would demand more than mere endurance. They would require transformation, an awakening to the moral and emotional currents that had shaped both the mansion and themselves. The fifth night closed with a fragile sense of hope. For the first time, the Whitmores felt that their engagement with the mansion was not solely about survival. It was about understanding, adaptation, and ultimately a reconciliation. The journey was far from over, but the family had taken a critical step. They were beginning to learn the language of the house, and in that understanding lay the possibility, not of control, but of coexistence. The sixth night arrived in a shroud of fog, so thick that the estate seemed swallowed by a grey, otherworldly ocean. The Whitmores gathered in the parlor once again, the oppressive weight of anticipation pressing down on them. Unlike previous nights, there was no initial tremor, no low hum vibrating through the floorboards. Instead, there was silence, so complete that it felt almost alive. Every creak, every whisper of air through the cracks in the walls became amplified, drawing attention to the minutest details. Clara shivered as the fog outside the windows seemed to slither against the panes like restless fingers, urging her to confront what had been avoided for too long. Eleanor took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady but cautious. "The house watches not just actions, but intention. We have made progress, but tonight we must dig deeper into ourselves, into our history, and into the legacy we carry." She held up the small notebook she had been filling for weeks, a meticulous record of occurrences, notes, observations, and patterns. The pages were worn and ink-stained, but they were a testament to the family's determination to understand the house rather than simply survive it. The first movement came from the East Wing, a section of the mansion that had been avoided for generations. A floorboard lifted slightly, then snapped back, as though the house were testing the Whitmore's courage. Thomas swallowed hard, pushing past his instinct to recoil. He took Eleanor's hand and motioned for Clara and Michael to follow. The corridor was narrow, lined with faded wallpaper that peeled in long, curling strips, revealing the raw wood beneath. Shadows shifted at the periphery of vision, forming shapes that were neither fully human nor entirely abstract. Yet there was a rhythm to them, a subtle choreography that suggested observation rather than aggression. In the center of the wing, a large covered object rested beneath a dust sheet. The family approached with careful step. Thomas gently removed the cloth, revealing a long abandoned organ, its keys yellowed with age, and its pedals worn by decades of silence. Eleanor hesitated, sensing that the instrument was more than a piece of furniture. It was a vessel of memory, a repository of the emotions and secrets that had accumulated in the house over generations. When she pressed a single key, the sound was muted, brittle, yet unmistakably musical, a whisper of what had once been. As they explored further, The walls began to respond. Faint markings appeared as though etched by invisible hands. Symbols, dates, initials. They were not random, but connected, forming a lattice work of stories, warnings, and confessions. The Whitmores realized that each symbol was linked to an event in the house's past, a key to understanding the mansion's intricate web of memory. Clara traced her fingers over the carvings, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath the surface. It was a tactile conversation with history, demanding acknowledgement and comprehension. Michael discovered a small locked cabinet embedded in the wall. Its surface was etched with unfamiliar glyphs that glowed faintly in the dim light. He fumbled with the lock, realizing that brute force would accomplish nothing. The cabinet required patience, understanding, and perhaps an alignment of intention. Eleanor instructed the family to focus their thoughts, to visualize the key, rather than seek a physical solution. Slowly, deliberately, the lock clicked, releasing the cabinet door. Inside lay a collection of letters and journals, many written in trembling handwriting, detailing the house's previous occupants and their encounters with its strange phenomena. These documents revealed stories of joy, sorrow, ambition, and regret, all intertwined with the mansion's essence.
As they read, the mansion responded with subtle, almost imperceptible movements. The floor beneath them seemed to pulse gently. The walls exhaled a long, slow sigh, and the air thickened with the scent of aged wood and candle smoke. The house was communicating, acknowledging that the Whitmores were beginning to comprehend its nature. Yet, there was a cautionary undertone. Understanding alone would not suffice. Respect, humility, and honesty were required in equal measure. The night's lessons were not merely about uncovering hidden histories, but also about confronting their own internal shadows. The family was forced to confront personal truths that mirrored the mansion's dark secrets. Thomas grappled with long-buried resentment toward his ancestors, realizing that his anger and pride could distort perception. Clara faced guilt and fear, recognizing the ways in which her hesitation and indecision had contributed to the tension in the house. Michael confronted doubt, acknowledging that his reliance on logic had limited his ability to perceive subtle truths. Eleanor, as the guide and chronicler, recognized the responsibility she bore to mediate, not only between the family and the house, but also between the past and the present. Hours passed with careful exploration and observation. The Whitmores discovered that by acknowledging the house's history, their own failings, and the interwoven narratives, they could influence the mansion's reactions. Objects that had previously resisted interaction now seemed almost eager to respond. Doors opened smoothly, corridors remained stable, and the air held a sense of cautious welcome. It was a fragile equilibrium, one that required constant awareness and active participation. By the approach of dawn, the sixth night concluded. The Whitmores emerged from the east wing, exhausted yet invigorated. The mansion had revealed more of its essence, but it had also reminded them of the stakes. Understanding required vigilance, and engagement required honesty. They were learning the language of the house, yet each revelation brought with it a deeper awareness of the challenges ahead. Eleanor summarized their progress in the quiet of the parlor. "We are beginning to see the mansion for what it truly is, a living archive, a reflection of human emotion, memory, and consequence. Each night, we learn more, but we must also be prepared for moments when understanding alone will not be enough. The house will test us in ways that go beyond observation. It will demand integrity, courage, and empathy." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily upon him. "We cannot rush. We must respect the process, even when it terrifies us. If we fail to honor the mansion, the consequences will be greater than fear alone can predict." Clara, still shaken but resolute, added, "And we must face ourselves. The house mirrors what we hide, what we deny, and what we avoid. Only by confronting those truths can we hope to survive the nights ahead. As the first light of morning pierced the fog, the family realized that the sixth night had marked a turning point. They were no longer merely reacting to the house. They were engaging with it. Each member carried newfound awareness, yet also the knowledge that the mansion's demands would intensify. The house was patient, relentless, and profoundly aware, and the Whitmores had only begun to grasp the magnitude of the challenge that lay before them. The sixth night arrived in a shroud of fog, so thick that the estate seemed swallowed by a gray, otherworldly ocean. The Whitmores gathered in the parlor once again, the oppressive weight of anticipation pressing down on them. Unlike previous nights, there was no initial tremor, no low hum vibrating through the floorboards. Instead, there was silence, so complete that it felt almost alive. Every creak, every whisper of air through the cracks in the walls became amplified, drawing attention to the minutest details. Clara shivered as the fog outside the windows seemed to slither against the panes like restless fingers, urging her to confront what had been avoided for too long. Eleanor took a deep breath and spoke, her voice steady but cautious. The house watches not just actions, but intention. We have made progress, but tonight we must dig deeper into ourselves, into our history, and into the legacy we carry. She held up the small notebook she had been filling for weeks, a meticulous record of occurrences, notes, observations, and patterns. The pages were worn and ink-stained, but they were a testament to the family's determination to understand the house, rather than simply survive it. The first movement came from the East Wing, a section of the mansion that had been avoided for generations. A floorboard lifted slightly, then snapped back, as though the house were testing the Whitmore's courage. Thomas swallowed hard, pushing past his instinct to recoil. He took Eleanor's hand and motioned for Clara and Michael to follow. The corridor was narrow, lined with faded wallpaper that peeled in long, curling strips, revealing the raw wood beneath. Shadows shifted at the periphery of vision, forming shapes that were neither fully human nor entirely abstract. Yet there was a rhythm to them, a subtle choreography that suggested observation rather than aggression. In the center of the wing, a large covered object rested beneath a dust sheet. The family approached with careful step. Thomas gently removed the cloth, revealing a long abandoned organ, its keys yellowed with age, and its pedals worn by decades of silence. Eleanor hesitated, sensing that the instrument was more than a piece of furniture. It was a vessel of memory, a repository of the emotions and secrets that had accumulated in the house over generations. When she pressed a single key, the sound was muted, brittle, yet unmistakably musical, a whisper of what had once been. As they explored further, the walls began to respond. Faint markings appeared, as though etched by invisible hands. Symbols, dates, initials. They were not random, but connected, forming a latticework of stories, warnings, and confessions. The Whitmores realized that each symbol was linked to an event in the house's past, a key to understanding the mansion's intricate web of memory. Clara traced her fingers over the carvings, feeling the subtle vibrations beneath the surface. It was a tactile conversation with history, demanding acknowledgement and comprehension. Michael discovered a small locked cabinet embedded in the wall. Its surface was etched with unfamiliar glyphs that glowed faintly in the dim light. He fumbled with the lock, realizing that brute force would accomplish nothing. The cabinet required patience, understanding, and perhaps an alignment of intention. Eleanor instructed the family to focus their thoughts, to visualize the key, rather than seek a physical solution. Slowly, deliberately, the lock clicked, releasing the cabinet door. Inside lay a collection of letters and journals, many written in trembling handwriting, detailing the house's previous occupants and their encounters with its strange phenomena. These documents revealed stories of joy, sorrow, ambition, and regret, all intertwined with the mansion's essence. As they read,
The mansion responded with subtle, almost imperceptible movements. The floor beneath them seemed to pulse gently. The walls exhaled a long, slow sigh, and the air thickened with the scent of aged wood and candle smoke. The house was communicating, acknowledging that the Whitmores were beginning to comprehend its nature. Yet there was a cautionary undertone. Understanding alone would not suffice. Respect, humility, and honesty were required in equal measure. The night's lessons were not merely about uncovering hidden histories, but also about confronting their own internal shadows. The family was forced to confront personal truths that mirrored the mansion's dark secret. Thomas grappled with long-buried resentment toward his ancestors, realizing that his anger and pride could distort perception. Clara faced guilt and fear, recognizing the ways in which her hesitation and indecision had contributed to the tension in the house. Michael confronted doubt, acknowledging that his reliance on logic had limited his ability to perceive subtle truths. Eleanor, as the guide and chronicler, recognized the responsibility she bore to mediate, not only between the family and the house, but also between the past and the present. Hours passed with careful exploration and observation. The Whitmores discovered that by acknowledging the house's history, their own failings, and the interwoven narratives, they could influence the mansion's reaction. Objects that had previously resisted interaction now seemed almost eager to respond. Doors opened smoothly, corridors remained stable, and the air held a sense of cautious welcome. It was a fragile equilibrium, one that required constant awareness and active participation. By the approach of dawn, the sixth night concluded. The Whitmores emerged from the east wing, exhausted yet invigorated. The mansion had revealed more of its essence, but it had also reminded them of the stakes. Understanding required vigilance, and engagement required honesty. They were learning the language of the house, yet each revelation brought with it a deeper awareness of the challenges ahead. Eleanor summarized their progress in the quiet of the parlor. "We are beginning to see the mansion for what it truly is, a living archive, a reflection of human emotion, memory, and consequence. Each night we learn more, but we must also be prepared for moments when understanding alone will not be enough. The house will test us in ways that go beyond observation. It will demand integrity, courage, and empathy." Thomas nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle heavily upon him. "We cannot rush. We must respect the process, even when it terrifies. If we fail to honor the mansion, the consequences will be greater than fear alone can predict." Clara, still shaken but resolute, added, "And we must face ourselves. The house mirrors what we hide, what we deny, and what we avoid. Only by confronting those truths can we hope to survive the nights ahead." As the first light of morning pierced the fog, the family realized that the sixth night had marked a turning point. They were no longer merely reacting to the house, they were engaging with. Each member carried newfound awareness, yet also the knowledge that the mansion's demands would intensify. The house was patient, relentless, and profoundly aware, and the Whitmores had only begun to grasp the magnitude of the challenge that lay before them. The seventh night arrived without warning, as though the mansion itself had grown impatient with the Whitmores' measured approach. The fog had lifted slightly, but an unnatural stillness had taken its place. No wind whispered through the eaves, no distant animal stirred. Even the town beyond the estate seemed to hold its breath. Within the house, shadows clung to corners, stretched along hallways, and lingered behind closed doors, as though waiting for the family to make a misstep. The air was dense, pressing against their lungs with a weight that was both physical and psychological. Eleanor gathered the family in the main hall, her eyes scanning each member for signs of hesitation or fear. "Tonight," she said softly, "we must confront the heart of the house. All our discoveries, observations, and efforts have led to this. What we find here will reveal whether we are prepared to continue, or whether the house will claim us as it has claimed others." The corridor to the north wing, which had remained largely unexplored, now beckoned. The floorboards groaned underfoot as they entered, each creak a warning. Clara held Thomas's hand tightly, her knuckles white, while Michael's gaze darted from shadow to shadow, analyzing every flicker of movement. Eleanor led the way, her lantern casting flickering patterns on the walls, illuminating faded portraits of previous occupants whose eyes seemed to follow them, judging, warning, or perhaps pleading. At the far end of the wing, they discovered a doorway that had been hidden behind a heavy tapestry. Eleanor brushed her fingers over the fabric, feeling the slight draft that indicated the presence of a passage beyond. With deliberate care, they drew the tapestry aside and found a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The air that seeped up from below was colder, damper, and carried the scent of earth, rot, and something faintly metallic. The family hesitated, the weight of anticipation almost unbearable. But Eleanor pressed on. "This is where the house keeps its secrets," she said. "What lies below will test us more than any shadow or whisper ever has." The stairs led to a subterranean chamber, a room carved into the bedrock beneath the estate. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding objects that radiated a palpable energy: trinkets, journals, letters, and artifacts from countless generations. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar, its surface etched with symbols that were unfamiliar, and yet strangely recognizable. The symbols pulsed faintly with an inner light, as if the room itself were alive, breathing in rhythm, with their own heartbeats. As they explored, it became evident that chamber was both a repository and a trap. Objects on the shelves seemed to shift slightly when unobserved, moving from one place to another, aligning themselves into patterns that made sense only when the family pieced them together. Clara discovered a series of journals bound in leather, each belonging to a member of a previous generation. The writings detailed encounters with the house, the rituals attempted, and the consequences of failure. One entry described a child who had vanished for days, only to return changed, withdrawn, and forever altered. Another recounted a hidden chamber that had swallowed an entire night's worth of sound, leaving the family in eerie silence for weeks. Thomas, drawn to the altar, traced his fingers over the carved symbols, feeling the faint vibrations beneath the stone. The symbols seemed to respond, glowing brighter with each deliberate. He realized that the chamber was not merely a storage space, but a living record, a mirror reflecting the actions and intentions of those who entered. Every thought, every emotion, every unspoken fear was recorded, magnified, and sometimes distorted into consequence. Eleanor instructed the family to approach with reverence. "The house is patient, but it is not forgiving. We must act with care, respect, and clarity. What we do here tonight will echo far beyond this room." They followed her guidance, examining the objects on the shelves with meticulous attention, noting the connections between journals, artifacts, and symbols. Slowly, patterns emerged. Each generation had attempted to understand the house in its own way, often failing because of arrogance, haste, or fear. The Whitmores recognized echoes of their own behaviors in the stories of the past: impatience, frustration, doubt. Each failure had left a residue, a trace that now resonated in the chamber, waiting to challenge the current inhabitants. As the night deepened, the chamber itself seemed to come alive. Shadows stretched along the walls, taking on forms that were almost human. Whispers filled the air, not loud enough to startle, but insistent, tugging at memory, guilt, and fear. Michael felt a chill run through him as a whisper called his name, followed by a soft, accusing murmur. "You do not understand. You cannot see." Clara shivered, sensing a similar tug at her conscience, a reminder of choices she had made and avoided. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility like a physical hand on his shoulder, pressing him to act with thought and intention. Eleanor, attuned to the subtleties of the chamber, guided the family through a ritual of acknowledgement. They spoke aloud their fears, their regrets, and their intention. Each confession seemed to resonate with the symbols on the altar, causing them to glow brighter, pulsing in rhythm with their voices. The chamber responded, the air vibrating with energy that was at once comforting and ominous. Hours passed in careful, deliberate exploration. The family began to feel a connection to the house that went beyond fear, a fragile light, understanding that the mansion was not merely a vessel of terror, but a keeper of memory, a recorder of consequence, and a mirror of human nature. Yet the lessons were not complete. The house had shown them only fragments of its essence, leaving much to be deciphered, understood, and respected. As the first light of dawn filtered down into the chamber, the Whitmores emerged, weary but more aware than ever. The seventh night had tested them in ways that transcended fear or curiosity. It demanded honesty, introspection, and courage. The family realized that survival depended not just on endurance, but on comprehension. They had glimpsed the heart of the mansion, yet the core remained veiled, waiting for the moment when they could confront it fully. Eleanor, recording the night's events in her notebook, noted, "The house is patient, relentless, and wise. It tests our intentions, our courage, and our integrity. We are beginning to understand its language, but understanding alone will not suffice. We must act with clarity, humility, and unity if we hope to navigate the nights ahead." Thomas, Clara, and Michael, each lost in thought, understood the gravity of the lessons learned. The mansion was no longer an external adversary. It was a reflection of themselves, a living testament to the consequences of action and inaction. To face it successfully, they would need to continue confronting not only the house, but the truths they had long avoided within themselves. The seventh night ended with cautious hope and the recognition that their journey was far from over. The mansion had revealed a portion of its secret, and in doing so, it had demanded more than compliance. It had demanded honesty, courage, and an unwavering commitment to the family's collective survival. The eighth night descended with a heavier weight than any before. The mansion seemed aware that the Whitmores had begun to understand, and in response, it shifted. Hallways twisted subtly, doors led to rooms they had never noticed before, and the shadows deepened into shapes that defied explanation. The family moved as a single unit, lanterns held high, each step measured and deliberate, aware that any misstep could have consequences far beyond the immediate.
Eleanor led them through the northern corridor, where the air carried a faint metallic scent, reminiscent of blood long dried yet never forgotten. The floorboards groaned under their weight, echoing like distant thunder, yet it was the silence between the groans that unnerved them the most. Here, the house spoke without words, a pressure in the air, a vibration underfoot, and the subtle whisper of movement unseen created a chorus of anticipation. They reached a room with walls entirely lined with mirrors, tarnished and cracked from decades of neglect. At first, the family saw only their reflections, distorted by time and the imperfections of the glass. But soon, subtle differences appeared. Shadows moved independently, figures lingered where none should, and the reflection showed moments from the past, arguments, disappearances, and tragedies long concealed by the house. Clara's breath caught as she saw herself in one mirror, but her reflection's eyes were hollow, and it mouthed words she had never spoken yet, felt intimately familiar. Thomas stepped closer, mesmerized and horrified, realizing that the mirrors were not mere glass, but windows into memory. Each surface captured echoes of the house's past, amplifying them and presenting them as warnings or perhaps invitations. He noticed an inscription etched into the corner of one frame, faint but legible. To confront the house is to confront oneself. All that you deny will be reflected, magnified, and judged. Eleanor instructed the family to divide their attention carefully. Clara was to document the images, noting anything that might help them understand the patterns of the house's influence. Michael, with his analytical mind, was to observe the mechanics, the movement of shadows, the way light shifted, the seemingly impossible geometry of reflections. Thomas, guided by instinct, would probe the room's deeper mysteries, interacting with the surfaces and testing the limits of what the mirrors contained. Hours passed. With tense concentration, each family member felt the strain, the exhausting pull between fear and curiosity. The mirrors were alive in a way that no ordinary object could be. They responded to emotion, intention, and thought. At one point, Eleanor noticed a reflection of herself that did not mirror her movements, but instead gestured toward a hidden panel in the wall. Following the cue, she pressed her hand against the surface, and a section of the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passage descending further into the mansion's depth. The passage was lined with carvings, figures intertwined with symbols, stories frozen in stone that seemed to warn, admonish, and instruct simultaneously. Some carvings depicted families who had failed the house, their forms twisted in despair. Others showed those who had succeeded, their expressions serene, their movements harmonious with the space around them. Eleanor realized that the mansion preserved its history in layers, accessible only to those willing to observe, interpret, and respond correctly. Descending the passage, they entered a subterranean library, the air heavy with dust and the scent of aged parchment. Shelves rose to the ceiling, crammed with books, journals and ledgers, some bound in leather, others in materials unknown. Each volume pulsed faintly, a subtle reminder that the house imbued its records with more than ink and paper. It imbued them with the essence of experience. Clara began examining the books, carefully flipping pages without disturbing the energy within. She found diaries of past families who had lived and suffered within the mansion. Their accounts mirrored the Whitmores' own experiences, yet each revealed a unique aspect of the house's consciousness. A child lost for days, a parent driven to madness, a servant who vanished entirely. Thomas discovered a series of symbols carved into the floor. As he traced them with his fingers, the stones hummed softly beneath his touch. He realized that the patterns formed a map of the mansion's unseen architecture, a blueprint revealing secret chambers, hidden stairways, and corridors that defied normal construction. The house, he thought, was not merely a building, but a living organism, aware of its inhabitants, shaping their perceptions and testing their responses. Michael uncovered a ledger detailing the behavior of previous generations. The mansion recorded not only events, but the emotional and moral decisions that accompanied them. Those who acted selfishly, violently, or deceitfully left imprints that the house amplified. Those who acted with courage, compassion, and honesty found the mansion's response tempered, even protective. The family realized that the mansion's power was not arbitrary, but deeply tied to human behavior, a mirror and judge intertwined in stone and shadow. As dawn approached, the Whitmores regrouped, their minds a mixture of exhaustion and revelation. They had uncovered another layer of the mansion's consciousness, a deeper understanding of its mechanisms and motive. The eighth night had tested them, not just physically, but morally, challenging their integrity, patience, and unity. Eleanor summarized the lessons quietly, her voice steady but grave. We have glimpsed the mansion's heart again, but it is not yet fully revealed. Each night teaches us something new, and each revelation demands that we act with care. The house observes not only our actions, but our intentions. We are learning its language, and the better we understand it, the more control we may have over our fate within it. Clara, Thomas, and Michael exchanged silent glances, each aware that the mansion's influence extended far beyond their immediate fears. It tested, judged, and reflected, and to navigate it successfully, they would need to integrate the lessons of the past, the present, and what they had yet to uncover. The eighth night ended with a fragile sense of progress. The mansion had revealed more of itself, yet it had done so in a way that emphasized responsibility, vigilance, and cohesion. The Whitmores understood that they could not approach the final challenges individually. They would succeed only if they remained united, perceptive, and steadfast. The mansion had set the stage for the ultimate confrontation, and the family knew that the coming nights would demand every ounce of their courage, wisdom, and resolve. The ninth night arrived with a tension that felt almost tangible, pressing down on the Whitmores like the weight of history itself. The mansion's walls seemed to have grown taller, the shadows deeper, and the air denser, as though it sensed the proximity of an approaching climax. Every step they took felt measured, deliberate, and yet increasingly perilous. The family moved as one, their bonds tested by fear, fatigue, and the unrelenting intelligence of the house. Eleanor led the group into the eastern wing, a corridor they had skirted on previous nights. Here, the walls were lined with tapestries so faded that the scenes they once depicted were barely discernible. Figures in medieval attire moved across landscapes of impossibly twisted architecture, their faces caught in expressions of shock, despair, and terror. Yet, in the dim glow of their lanterns, the family noticed subtle changes. The figures' eyes seemed to follow them, and shadows flickered in response to their movements.
as if the tapestries themselves were observing and recording. At the end of the corridor, a massive wooden door loomed, ancient iron hinges groaning as it was pushed open. Beyond it lay a circular chamber, the center of which contained a raised dais with a stone pedestal resting. Upon it was an ornate box, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shimmer in the flickering light. The carvings depicted a family, their expressions frozen in fear, surrounding a figure shrouded in darkness. Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. "This must be what the mansion has been guiding us toward," she whispered. Clara stepped forward cautiously, her journal ready. She could feel the energy radiating from the box, a presence that seemed to thrum in harmony with the house itself. The air was charged, heavy with a static that made her skin prickle. Every instinct warned her to step back, yet curiosity and a sense of responsibility propelled her forward. She glanced at Thomas and Michael, who nodded silent. Together, they approached the pedestal, their collective presence amplifying the room's tension. Eleanor reached out and traced the carvings with her fingers. A low hum resonated through the chamber, and the shadows on the walls began to twist and writhe, forming shapes that were almost human. They saw glimpses of past families who had dared approach the pedestal, their forms contorted in agony and regret. Some appeared to be warning them, others seemed to beckon, desperate for release from their eternal torment. The Whitmores realized that the mansion preserved the fates of those who had failed its tests, and the stakes of failure were painfully clear. Thomas examined the box itself, noting the precision with which it had been constructed. The carvings were not merely decorative, they were functional, a kind of code or lock that demanded comprehension and correct interpretation. The family spent hours studying the symbols, their understanding deepening with each passing moment. Patterns emerged, sequences of emotion, intention, and action that the mansion recognized as either compliance or defiance. Michael discovered a small hidden compartment on the side of the box. Inside was a parchment, brittle with age, detailing a ritual of confrontation. It described the house's expectations for any family seeking to break the cycle of loss. They must confront their deepest fears, confess their darkest truths, and act with complete unity. The ritual demanded honesty, courage, and the willingness to sacrifice personal ego for the good of the family. Any deviation or deceit would result in failure, perpetuating the mansion's cycle of torment. As night deepened, the chamber seemed to come alive. Shadows coalesced into forms that mimicked their movements, echoing their gestures with slight delays, almost mocking their attempts at understanding. Eleanor instructed the family to focus not on the phantoms, but on their shared objective, the box. They each whispered their truths, fears, and regrets, letting the mansion witness the raw honesty of their hearts. The process was draining, both emotionally and physically, but it was necessary. The house responded. The shadows shifted from mockery to solemnity. The tapestry's figures seemed to relax, and a faint glow emanated from the carvings on the box. The energy in the chamber shifted from oppressive to expectant. Eleanor carefully lifted the lid. Inside was a small crystalline object, pulsing with a light that was almost alive. It seemed to resonate with the collective consciousness of the family, reacting to their honesty, courage, and unity. Clara reached out and touched instantly. Visions flooded her mind, memories of past Whitmores, moments of joy and sorrow, the legacy of the family's struggles against the mansion. The object held not only the history of the house, but also the power to influence its future. Eleanor understood that this was the culmination of their journey thus far, a chance to reshape the mansion's influence and protect future generations from the cycles of fear and loss. The family worked together to place the object on the dais, aligning it according to the patterns they had discerned from the carvings. Light flared, shadows retreated, and a silence descended, profound and absolute. The mansion seemed to breathe, acknowledging the Whitmores' achievement while reminding them that the journey was not yet complete. The ninth night ended with a sense of tentative triumph. They had confronted the mansion's heart, revealed their truths, and gained a measure of control. Yet the final night promised challenges greater than any they had faced. As they withdrew from the chamber, each family member carried the weight of understanding. The mansion was not an enemy to be defeated, but a force to be comprehended, respected, and navigated with intelligence, empathy, and unity. The lessons of the ninth night would guide them into the ultimate confrontation, where courage, honesty, and familial cohesion would determine the fate of all who dwelled within its walls. The 10th night arrived as a storm descended over the mansion, the wind lashing against the windows, and the rain hammering the roof like relentless drums. The house seemed to respond to the tempest, its walls creaking, groaning, and sighing in a way that mirrored the tension with Eleanor, Clara, Thomas, and Michael approached the central hall, where the mansion's oppressive presence was strongest. They had endured 9 nights of fear, revelation, and discovery, and now the final confrontation awaited. The hall was transformed. Shadows no longer lurked passively along the walls. They surged, coalesced, and twisted into shapes that reflected the deepest anxieties of each family member. Faces of past inhabitants emerged, distorted in anguish and warning. Some were familiar, distorted echoes of those the Whitmores had glimpsed before. Others were completely alien, monstrous in their aspect, as though drawn from nightmares, yet unnamed. The air was thick, charged with anticipation, and each breath seemed to weigh heavily upon their chest. Eleanor led the family forward, toward the central dais, where the crystalline object they had discovered the previous night now rested. Its soft, pulsing light had grown brighter, resonating with a rhythm that seemed tied to the mansion itself. The house demanded a final act, the culmination of their honesty, courage, and unity. They knew instinctively that failure now would be irreversible, that the ghosts of the past would reclaim them should they falter. The family joined hands around the pedestal, their eyes fixed on the glowing crystal. Eleanor spoke first, her voice steady despite the fear gripping her heart. She recited the truths they had revealed to the mansion, the fears, the secrets, and the regrets that had defined them individually and collectively. Clara followed, confessing the moments of doubt and hesitation, the time she had feared losing the family to the house's power. Thomas and Michael echoed the confessions, each voice adding to a growing chorus of honesty that filled the hall. As the words were spoken, the mansion's response was immediate. Shadows writhed violently, voices whispered indistinctly in a cacophony that seemed to come from every corner. Then none. The storm outside intensified, rain pelting the windows in sheets, wind rattling the panes as if the world itself sought to intervene. Yet the Whitmores remained united, a single entity in purpose and resolve, their bond the only shield against the onslaught of the house's fury. The crystal's light flared, casting the hall in a brilliance that revealed every hidden detail, the intricate patterns carved into the walls, the tapestry figures frozen mid-motion, the echoes of past families trapped within the mansion's memory. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, the storm inside the hall ceased. Silence fell, profound and complete. The mansion seemed to pause, holding its breath, waiting for the final act. Eleanor lifted the crystal from its pedestal. In her hands it radiated warmth, a living energy that pulsed with the history of the house and the collective courage of the family. She understood what needed to be done. The crystal had to be returned to the origin point of the mansion's power, a hidden chamber deep beneath the foundations, a place no one had ever ventured until now. Guided by instinct and the subtle cues of the mansion itself, they descended a narrow staircase, each step echoing in the hollow silence. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows, walls lined with strange inscriptions that glowed faintly in the crystal's light. The floor was etched with a circular pattern, radiating outward like the spokes of a wheel, with a central depression designed to receive the crystal. Eleanor placed it carefully into the center. Immediately, the inscriptions flared, casting their language of light across the walls in a display of brilliance and motion. The house responded, its power drawn to the crystal, concentrated, and then, remarkably, the shadows that had haunted the Whitmores for 10 nights began to dissipate. Faces in the walls softened, figures in the tapestries relaxed, and the oppressive weight that had suffocated the hall lifted. The mansion seemed to breathe once more, not with menace, but with recognition of their courage and truth. A low, harmonic vibration filled the chamber, resonating through bone and sinew, a sound that was both terrifying and beautiful. As the energy settled, the family realized they were free. The house no longer claimed them. Its ancient curse had been confronted, challenged, and finally neutralized, not through force, but through unity, honesty, and courage. They had faced the ghosts of past failures, of shame and secrecy, and emerged intact, transformed by the experience. The mansion's walls, though still ancient and formidable, no longer carried the threat that had shadowed every corner, every room. Emerging into the fresh morning light, the Whitmores felt a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. Rain-soaked yet invigorated, they surveyed the mansion from the outside. It appeared unchanged, yet they knew differently. Its power remained, yes, but now it was tempered by respect, comprehension, and the acknowledgement of human courage. The family had endured, not because they were unafraid, but because they had faced fear together, honestly and unflinching. In the days that followed, the Whitmores reflected on the lessons of the mansion. They understood that some legacies are not inherited in wealth or property, but in courage, resilience, and the bonds that hold a family together. The ghosts, the curses, the malevolent echoes of past families, they were reminders, not arbiters of fate. By confronting them, the Whitmores had reclaimed their history, their legacy, and their future. The mansion, for all its darkness and history, had been a teacher, as much as it had been a threat. The family had fought, they had endured, and they had survived. Their story would never be forgotten, not because it was sensational or tragic, but because it was a testament to the power of unity, honesty, and unwavering courage in the face of forces that sought to destroy it. As they left the mansion behind, its silhouette dark against the breaking dawn, the Whitmores carried with them the knowledge that while evil and fear may linger, they can be faced, challenged, and ultimately overcome. The house remained silent and imposing, but no longer insurmountable. Its history was now intertwined with theirs, not as conquerors or victims, but as survivors who had claimed the final chapter of a story long shrouded in darkness. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more mysteries that will keep you on the edge of your seat.